The HOA finally banned my afternoon porch nap because, according to Karen, sleeping in public view creates an atmosphere of residential decline. So the next day, I moved my beach chair onto the flat roof above my garage, took off my shoes, pulled a straw hat over my face, and went to sleep 12 feet higher. By 4 o'clock, 3 neighbors had sent me photos of myself from the street. By 4:15, Karen had sent 6 emails. By 4:30, someone had created a neighborhood poll asking whether I looked peaceful, defiant, or possibly deceased. I voted peaceful. My name is Evan Mercer, and I lived in Briar Glen, a tidy subdivision outside Charleston, South Carolina, where every front porch was supposed to look inviting as long as nobody actually relaxed on it. The houses had pale siding, black shutters, and enough rocking chairs to suggest comfort was permitted strictly as decoration. I had lived there for 7 years. Most afternoons, sometime after lunch, I took a 20-minute nap on my porch. That was it. No loud music, no television, no beer cooler, no snoring loud enough to trigger wildlife warnings. I had an old wooden chaise under the ceiling fan, a small side table, and a habit of closing my eyes around 3 whenever work allowed. I worked from home as a technical illustrator for industrial manuals, which meant I spent most mornings drawing machines nobody wanted to look at, and labeling screws people would eventually lose. By early afternoon, my brain usually felt like somebody had filled it with bolts. The nap fixed that. 20 minutes outside. A little breeze. Maybe the sound of the mail truck. Then I went back inside and worked until evening. My doctor never prescribed it. A productivity coach never recommended it. I simply discovered that I became less unpleasant after sleeping briefly in a chair. My neighbor, Henry Vaughn, called it preventive maintenance. Henry was 63 and had retired from marine engine repair, which meant he believed all human behavior could be explained using machinery. "You overheat," he once told me. "I sit at a computer." Still friction? I am not a diesel engine. That is exactly what an overheated diesel engine would say. Henry occasionally joined me on his own porch. Not to sleep. He claimed naps were too close to surrender. Instead, he sat in a rocking chair and read fishing magazines while pretending not to doze. Nobody cared. Then Felicia Crane became HOA president. People called her Felicia to her face. Most people called her Karen everywhere else. She had moved to Briar Glen 2 years earlier from a gated community near Hilton Head and immediately began describing our neighborhood as under-leveraged. Nobody knew what a neighborhood leveraged against, but she said the word often enough that several board members began nodding whenever she used it. Felicia liked appearances. Specifically, appearances involving nobody appearing too comfortable. She introduced porch presentation guidelines within 6 weeks of becoming president. Cushions had to remain upright. Outdoor shoes could not be visibly abandoned. Newspapers needed to be retrieved promptly. Blankets were discouraged unless folded. I discovered the nap problem when I woke up one Tuesday afternoon and found a white envelope balanced on my stomach. I stared at it. Then at the sidewalk. Felicia stood beside my hydrangeas with both hands clasped in front of her. "Did you put this on me while I was sleeping?" "You were unresponsive." "I was asleep." "I called your name twice." "That is often unsuccessful during sleep." She ignored that. The envelope contained a courtesy notice, not a violation. Yet, it stated that extended reclining activity visible from the street may create the appearance of unattended occupancy or personal distress. I read the sentence again. What does unattended occupancy mean? Felicia tilted her head. Someone seeing you motionless may assume something is wrong. Did you assume something was wrong? I considered it. Did you check whether I was breathing? I called your name. You put paperwork on my chest. That got your attention? Eventually, Felicia pointed toward the chaise. Residents have raised concerns. Which residents? Complaints are confidential. About me sleeping? About porch presentation. Henry was watering a fern next door. Without turning around, he called, I complained that he sleeps better than I do. Felicia looked toward him. That is not helpful. Henry nodded. Accurate, though. I sat upright. What rule prohibits sleeping? There is no rule that uses that word. Good. But exterior use standards require front porches to maintain an active residential appearance. I stared at her. I am actively residential. You are unconscious. Briefly. That is the opposite of active. Depends how hard I'm dreaming. She closed her eyes for a second. Felicia explained that I could nap in the backyard, inside the house, or anywhere not visible from common streets. She said front porches were part of the neighborhood's public-facing identity. I looked down the street. Henry was still watering the same fern. Mrs. Kellerman was clipping coupons at her patio table. A teenager was lying upside down on a porch swing with one foot against a column. Seems pretty public-facing. Those activities do not resemble abandonment. I own the house. That is not the concern. What is? She hesitated. Optics. That word irritated me more than the entire notice. I folded the paper. My nap is bad optics? It can suggest disengagement. From what? The community. I pay dues. That is not engagement. I waive. Felicia handed me a second sheet titled Porch Use Recommendations. I stopped reading after the phrase upright social posture. Henry walked over once she left. He took the recommendation sheet. Upright social posture? Yes. I have seen engine manuals with more empathy. Give it back. He kept reading. No prolonged horizontal leisure visible from street. I was at 30 degrees. Technical defense. I have a measuring app. Excellent. I expected the issue to disappear. Instead, Felicia returned 2 days later. This time she brought board secretary Melissa Grant, who looked embarrassed before reaching my steps. I was awake. That seemed to disappoint Felicia. We received another complaint. About the nap I did not take? About yesterday. I napped yesterday? Yes. So the system works. Melissa looked at the floor. Felicia held up a photograph. Someone had photographed me sleeping from across the street. My straw hat covered my face. One hand rested on my stomach. A book lay open beside the chair. I looked extremely comfortable. That is actually a good picture. Felicia lowered it. This is what residents see. A middle-aged man resting. A person appearing incapacitated. Do I appear injured? You appear inactive. I was. Exactly. Melissa finally spoke. Felicia, I think the issue is whether there's an actual standard. Felicia turned toward her. The board can interpret appearance provisions. Melissa looked at me. Have you had anyone complain directly? No. She looked back at Felicia. Felicia tightened her mouth. The purpose is prevention. I leaned against the porch rail. Prevention of sleep? Prevention of negative perceptions. Whose perception? Visitors. What visitors? Potential buyers. I understood then. A house 3 streets over had gone on the market. Felicia had decided every porch in Briar Glen was part of the sales brochure. I laughed. That was a mistake. She became colder. This is not funny. It is absolutely funny. You are affecting neighborhood presentation. My eyelids are affecting property values? You are reducing this to absurdity. No. I pointed toward the photograph. You did that! Melissa covered a smile with one hand. Felicia left me with a formal warning. If I continued prolonged visible reclining on the front porch, the board would consider a violation under general exterior use standards. Henry read the notice that evening. Move the chair. I'm not hiding in the backyard. Didn't say backyard. He pointed upward. I looked at the roof. No. The front half of my house had a conventional pitched roof. The garage was different. A previous owner had added a low-slope roof section above a reinforced sunroom extension, accessible through a second-floor maintenance door. The space was flat enough to stand safely near the center and surrounded by a 30-inch parapet wall that made it invisible from directly below. I had used it twice to clean gutters. Henry smiled. No. You already said that. No. Beach chair. No. Umbrella. No. Small cooler. No. Tiny side table. I stared at him. He nodded. Now you're thinking. I was not thinking. I was calculating. The HOA rule focused on porches, not roofs. Another section regulated permanent rooftop equipment, gosens, antennas, solar panels, and structures visible above the roofline. A folding beach chair was not permanent equipment. A person was not a structure, at least not under the building code. I checked. Twice. The maintenance door opened onto the flat section safely. The parapet protected the edges. I could position the chair more than 6 feet from any drop. I installed a removable rubber mat to prevent slipping and attached the chair to a heavy portable base so wind could not move it. I was not going to become a news story titled, "Man Dies Winning HOA Argument." Henry inspected the setup. Safe enough? That sounds uncertain. You still own knees. What does that mean? Nothing good happens to knees on ladders. I am using stairs. Then 80% safer. I moved my afternoon nap upstairs Friday. The view was excellent. From the roof, I could see rows of live oaks, chimneys, porches, and the distant top of the church steeple beyond the subdivision. A warm breeze moved across the parapet. My beach chair reclined comfortably. I wore my straw hat. I brought lemonade. Then I slept. 22 minutes. Best nap of the month. When I woke up, my phone contained 9 messages. The first was from Henry. You are visible from the entrance. The second was a photograph. My upper body and chair rose above the roofline from the angle of Briar Glen's main road. From a distance, I looked like someone vacationing on a small hotel. The third message came from Melissa. I am trying not to laugh. The fourth came from Felicia. Call me. I did not. The fifth, this is not acceptable. The sixth, you cannot use your roof as a lounge. The seventh, please respond. The eighth, Evan. The ninth came from Henry. She has binoculars. I leaned over the parapet. Felicia stood across the street. She had binoculars. I waved. She lowered them, then raised them again. I waved again. Her phone rang in my hand. I answered. Afternoon? Get off the roof. I just woke up. Get off the roof now. Why? You are deliberately creating a spectacle. I moved out of public porch view. You moved higher. Technically. You are visible from farther away. That was not your original concern. It is now. I adjusted the chair. Do you have a rule against sleeping on roofs? No one should need one? That sounds like a no. You cannot treat architectural documents like a game. I am not. You moved a beach chair onto your roof. Safely. That does not improve the sentence, Henry called from below. Ask if umbrellas are permitted. Felicia heard him. No umbrellas. I did not ask. Do not! I looked at the folded beach umbrella beside the chair. Understood. I did not open it. That afternoon, the neighborhood discovered Roof Evan. That was Henry's phrase, not mine. By evening, children riding bicycles slowed in front of my house to see whether I was still up there. Mrs. Kellerman called to ask whether the breeze was better. One neighbor said her husband wanted to know if I had rooftop Wi-Fi. The next day, Saturday, I skipped the nap. Felicia sent no emails. Sunday, I skipped it again. Monday afternoon, I returned to the roof. Felicia noticed within 6 minutes. I still do not know how. She sent another formal warning. This one cited unauthorized rooftop recreational use. I checked the HOA documents again. That phrase did not exist. I replied asking for the specific provision. She sent a section prohibiting roof decks. I did not have a roof deck. No railing had been added. No permanent surface installed. No stairs built. The access door already existed for maintenance. My chair remained portable. I sent photographs. She did not reply. The next afternoon, I napped again. This time, someone left a handwritten sign on the sidewalk. Sleep well, roofman. I brought it inside. Wednesday, another appeared. Nap forecast, 3 p.m. I removed that too. Thursday, Henry placed a cardboard cutout of a moon beside his porch. Felicia ordered him to remove it. He did. Then he replaced it with a sun. By the end of the week, the entire thing had become a neighborhood joke. That should have been the peak. It was not. The strange part began Friday. I climbed to the roof at 3 and discovered a small yellow beach umbrella already waiting beside my chair. Folded. Brand new. No note. I had not bought it. Henry denied responsibility. Melissa denied responsibility. Mrs. Kellerman said yellow was not her color. Felicia sent a message 20 minutes later. I saw the umbrella. Remove it. I replied, It is folded. She answered, It is still an umbrella. I brought it downstairs. The next day, another object appeared. A blue plastic cup holder clipped to the chair. Not mine. Sunday, someone left sunscreen. Monday, sunglasses. Tuesday, a small battery-operated fan. Every item appeared before my nap. Nobody admitted leaving them. It became a mystery. Henry called the unknown person the sleep fairy. I disliked that immediately. Felicia claimed I was staging the gifts for attention. I told her I was not organized enough to stage sunscreen. Then the mysterious person escalated. Friday afternoon, I opened the maintenance door and found a miniature wooden sign beside the chair. Briar Glen Rest Area. Below it, authorized capacity, 1 tired man. I laughed. Then I noticed something written on the back. Check the porch camera from May 14th. I stopped laughing. May 14th had been the day Felicia first left a courtesy notice on my chest. I had a doorbell camera facing the porch. I almost never reviewed old footage unless a package disappeared. I went downstairs. Henry came over. We opened the recording archive. At 3:17 p.m. on May 14th, I was asleep on the chaise. Felicia approached. She called my name once. Then again. She placed the envelope on my chest. Exactly as I remembered. She turned to leave. Then stopped. A black sedan had pulled to the curb. A man in a gray suit stepped out carrying a folder. Felicia spoke to him near the walkway. The audio was faint but clear enough. "See?" The man looked toward me. "That's the house?" "No, 3 doors down." "Then why are we here?" "Because this is exactly what I'm talking about." He glanced toward my porch. "A guy sleeping? It makes the street look unmanaged." The man looked confused. Felicia continued. "I need the whole block cleaned up before the appraisal visit." Henry paused the video. "Appraisal." I stared at the screen. The house 3 doors down was not simply for sale. Something else had been happening. We kept watching. The man opened his folder. "Felicia, the lender does not care whether a neighbor takes naps. I care. That is not the same standard. I'm trying to protect the valuation. Then focus on deferred maintenance and comparables. There are no maintenance issues. Then stop manufacturing them." Felicia's face hardened. The man walked back toward his car. Before leaving, he said something that changed the entire story. "The appraisal is for your house, not theirs." Henry looked at me. "Her house?" Felicia lived 5 streets away, not near the property for sale. Why had she been preparing an appraisal? We watched the rest. Felicia stood on the sidewalk after the man left. Then she looked directly toward my porch. Not angry, calculating. She took another photograph of me sleeping. That photograph became the one attached to my warning 2 days later. Henry leaned back. The porch rule started because she wanted an appraisal. Apparently. For her own house. Apparently. Why? I don't know. The mysterious sign had pointed us to the recording for a reason. Someone else knew. I looked at the wooden rest area sign. "Who keeps putting things on my roof?" Henry smiled. "The sleep fairy has evidence. I hate that name. Rooftop whistleblower? Worse." We checked the neighborhood message board. No mention of Felicia selling. No moving announcement. No refinance discussion. Nothing. Then Melissa called. Her voice sounded tense. "Evan, are you home?" "Yes." "Do not post anything about the appraisal." I looked at Henry. "How do you know?" Silence. "Melissa?" I left the sign. The mystery ended. Not completely, but enough. She had been leaving the rooftop gifts, too. Why? Because I could not get you to check the footage without telling you directly. You could have told me directly. I'm board secretary. That makes communication illegal? It makes this complicated. What is Felicia doing? Melissa exhaled. She is trying to refinance her house. That is private. Yes. Then why does my nap matter? Because she told the lender the neighborhood was under an active appearance improvement program. I stared at the phone. What program? The Porch guidelines. Henry mouthed. Oh. Melissa continued. Felicia had applied for a large cash-out refinance tied partly to home valuation. During preliminary conversations, she had described Briar Glen as undergoing stricter exterior standards that she believed would support higher neighborhood values. There was no fraud, no fake paperwork, no hidden bank account. Just a woman with a personal financial incentive becoming obsessed with proving that her neighborhood looked more controlled than it actually was. She needed the streets to photograph well. My porch nap irritated her because it contradicted the image she had described. I almost laughed. Does the lender care? Apparently not. Then why continue? Because Felicia does. That made more sense. The HOA fight was not about a legal scheme. It was about ego mixed with money. She had told someone she could improve the neighborhood's appearance, and now she could not tolerate visible proof that residents had lives outside her brochure. Melissa lowered her voice. There's more. Of course. The appraiser comes back Monday. For her house? Yes. And? She moved the appointment. To when? Melissa paused. 3 in the afternoon? Henry slowly smiled. My nap time. I looked toward the ceiling, toward the roof. Why would she do that? Because she thinks she can force you indoors by then. Felicia had scheduled her appraisal during the exact hour she had spent weeks trying to control. That was the shocking part. Not that my nap affected her valuation. It probably would not. But she believed it might. And belief had turned a harmless 20-minute rest into a neighborhood campaign. I looked at the wooden sign again. Authorized capacity, 1 tired man. Henry folded his arms. What are you going to do Monday? I thought about revenge. I could invite neighbors outside. Bad idea. I could cover the roof in beach umbrellas. Funny, but repetitive. I could wear something ridiculous. Too easy. Then I looked toward my porch chaise. The original problem. Felicia had banned the nap there because she wanted the street to look active, polished, and controlled. Maybe the strongest revenge was not becoming louder. Maybe it was making the difference between appearance and reality impossible to miss. I'm sleeping on the roof. Henry nodded. Obviously. But only me. No crowd? No? No signs? No. No umbrella? No. He looked disappointed. Then what is the revenge? I smiled. Monday is trash pickup. He stared. Then he understood. Every house on Felicia's carefully managed appraisal route would have ordinary life visible. Trash bins, delivery boxes, garden hoses, children's bicycles, work vans, porch chairs, normal things. I did not need to stage any of it. I only needed to refuse to hide. At 3 o'clock Monday afternoon, Felicia would bring an appraiser through Briar Glen, expecting a neighborhood photograph. Instead, she was going to see a neighborhood. And from 12 feet above it, I intended to sleep through the entire presentation. Monday afternoon arrived hot, bright, and offensively normal. Trash bins stood along the curb because pickup had been delayed by a mechanical problem. A landscaping crew had left 2 wheelbarrows beside the entrance median. Henry's fishing rods leaned against his porch. Mrs. Kellerman had 3 grocery bags sitting on her steps, and somebody's child had abandoned a purple scooter directly beneath a mailbox. Briar Glen looked lived in, which apparently was Felicia's worst-case scenario. I carried my beach chair through the second-floor maintenance door just before 3. No umbrella, no signs, no cooler. Just the chair, my straw hat, a paperback, and a glass of iced tea. Henry stood in his driveway looking upward. You forgot theatrical escalation. I'm resting. That has never stopped you before. I want this boring. He looked deeply disappointed. That is an aggressive creative choice. I positioned the chair behind the parapet, checked the weighted base, reclined, and put the hat over my face. Then, I waited. The appraiser arrived at 3:08. I heard the car before I saw it. A dark sedan moved slowly down the street, then stopped in front of Felicia's house 5 streets over. A few minutes later, it appeared again with Felicia in the passenger seat. She was giving him a tour. Of course she was. They drove past the entrance landscaping first, then the playground, then the clubhouse, then the streets she had spent weeks trying to make look like nobody ever used them. When they reached my block, the sedan slowed. I remained perfectly still. Through the tiny gap beneath my hat, I watched it approach. Felicia saw me immediately. Her entire body turned toward the roof. The appraiser followed her gaze. He looked up. There I was. A grown man asleep in a beach chair, 12 feet above his garage, while a trash bin stood at the curb below. He stared for maybe 3 seconds. Then he laughed. Not loudly, just enough. Felicia did not. The sedan stopped. I heard a door open. Then another, Felicia's voice carried across the yard. Evan. I did not move. Evan, still nothing. The appraiser said, "Is he asleep?" Felicia lowered her voice. "He does this deliberately." "On the roof?" "Yes. That is unusual. It violates community presentation standards." He looked around. "Does it violate a rule?" "We are reviewing that." Henry appeared on his porch holding a fishing magazine. The appraiser looked toward him. "Is this common?" Henry considered the question. "The roof part is new." Felicia closed her eyes. I lifted the edge of my hat. "Afternoon." The appraiser smiled. "You comfortable up there?" "Very. Safe?" "Flat section, parapet, secured chair, interior access." He nodded. "Good planning." Felicia stepped closer to the house. "This is exactly the kind of visual issue I mentioned." The appraiser looked at her. "You mentioned maintenance concerns." "Yes. This is not maintenance. It affects perception." "Whose?" "Buyers, lenders, visitors." He looked up at me again. "I'm not appraising his house." "That is not the point. It is a very important point." Henry coughed into his magazine. Felicia's face tightened. The appraiser continued walking. He looked at my landscaping. The siding, the driveway, the roof line, then the garbage bin. "Monday pickup?" "Delayed," Henry said. The appraiser nodded. "Normal?" Felicia looked almost offended by the word. They continued down the block. I reclined again. The confrontation lasted less than 5 minutes. There was no giant spectacle, no crowd, no banners, no public humiliation orchestrated in advance. That was why it worked. Felicia had spent weeks treating ordinary life like evidence of decline. The appraiser treated ordinary life like ordinary life. I fell asleep before they reached the next street. When I woke 23 minutes later, Henry was standing below. "How'd it go?" I was unconscious. "Strong defense." "Did she come back?" "No." "Good." He hesitated. "She sent an email." I checked my phone. The message was short. "Remove the chair from the roof immediately. Formal enforcement notice to follow." Henry looked up. So much for personal growth. Maybe she types before processing emotions. She types in capital letters. That is rarely processing. The formal notice arrived Tuesday morning. Felicia cited rooftop equipment rules, exterior use standards, nuisance provisions, safety concerns, and one section governing temporary structures. The beach chair was now a temporary structure. I sent the notice to a local property attorney, not because I wanted a lawsuit, because I had reached the point where arguing definitions with Felicia felt like playing chess against someone who kept adding pieces. The attorney, Rachel Moss, reviewed the documents and called me that afternoon. This is badly drafted. Mine or theirs? Theirs. Encouraging. The HOA has authority over certain exterior alterations. I made none. Correct. They can prohibit roof decks. I do not have one. Correct. They can regulate permanent equipment. The chair is folding. Yes. She paused. What exactly are you doing? Sleeping. On the roof. Yes. Another pause. Why? The porch nap became controversial. Rachel laughed. Of course it did. She explained that HOAs often had broad nuisance language, but enforcement still needed to be reasonable and consistent. A portable chair used briefly on an existing accessible flat roof was unusual, but the documents she reviewed did not clearly prohibit it. More importantly, the board would need to explain the harm. Noise? None. Structural change? None. Commercial activity? None. Safety risk to others? None. Visible offense? That was mostly subjective. Rachel advised me not to escalate physically, not to add structures, and not to ignore any legitimate safety order from the city or insurer. I had no intention of doing any of those things. I simply kept napping. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 20 minutes. Same chair, same hat, same man. The mystery gifts stopped once Melissa admitted leaving them. She apologized for the theatrics. I told her the tiny fan had been useful. She replied, "That does not absolve me." I kept the fan. Felicia's appraisal passed. I learned that from Melissa, not Felicia. The lender did not reduce her valuation because I slept on a roof. The trash bins, scooters, work vans, porch furniture, and other visible signs of human existence also failed to destroy Briar Glen financially. That should have ended the fight. It made Felicia angrier, because now she had no practical justification left, only pride. At the following HOA meeting, she proposed a new rule. Not against sleeping. That would have sounded ridiculous. Instead, she proposed no recreational occupancy of residential roof surfaces except for necessary maintenance. Henry read the draft. Recreational occupancy. That is me. You have become a land use category. I feel successful. Melissa did not. She had reached the limit of supporting Felicia. The board consisted of 5 members. Felicia had assumed the new rule would pass because previous appearance policies usually did. This time, people attended. Not because I organized them. Because Roof Evan had become a neighborhood conversation, and residents wanted to know whether the board planned to regulate where adults could sit on their own houses. One man asked whether cleaning gutters counted as recreational if he enjoyed it. Another asked whether solar panel technicians could take lunch breaks on the roof. Mrs. Kellerman wanted to know whether retrieving a frisbee constituted temporary roof occupancy. Felicia regretted opening questions. The meeting became funnier every minute. She tried to narrow the language. No chairs. Someone asked about kneeling pads. No lounging furniture. Someone asked about roofers taking breaks. Professional workers would be exempt. Henry raised his hand. What if Evan becomes a professional napper? Felicia stared at him. That is not an occupation. Influencers have done worse. Melissa put her head in her hands. The proposed rule exposed its own problem. Felicia was not regulating roofs. She was regulating me. Every revision became more specific until board member Calvin Drew finally asked the obvious question. Has anyone other than Evan complained about this? Felicia looked at the room. No hands. Has anyone been harmed? No hands. Has the structure been altered? No, Melissa said. Has the city cited it? No. Insurance? No. Then why are we writing a neighborhood-wide rule because one man naps unusually? Felicia answered too quickly. Because standards matter. Calvin leaned back. That is not an answer. The proposal failed, 3-2. Felicia and one board ally voted yes. Melissa, Calvin, and board member Ruth Palmer voted no. Nobody cheered. That would have made it feel like a revolution. Instead, Henry whispered, "Roof rights preserved," loud enough for half the room to hear. I laughed. Felicia heard. She closed the meeting early. I thought the story was over. Again, I underestimated her ability to find one more hill. Or roof. The next afternoon, she arrived at my house with a city building inspector. That was the shocking moment, not because I had done anything illegal, because Felicia had called the city herself. Inspector Raymond Ortiz introduced himself politely and asked whether he could see the roof access. I agreed. Felicia tried to follow us inside. I stopped her. The inspector is invited. I filed the complaint. You can wait outside. Raymond looked toward her. That is fine. She hated that. We went upstairs. He inspected the maintenance door, flat roof section, parapet height, chair location, portable base, drainage, and access route. He asked how long I stayed up there. 20 minutes. Any alcohol? No. Cooking equipment? No. Permanent furniture? No. Electrical additions? No. Shade structure? No. He looked at the folded yellow umbrella stored inside the maintenance doorway. What about that? Not used. He nodded. Then he looked over the parapet. Felicia stood below with her arms crossed. Raymond smiled slightly. This complaint says you built an unauthorized rooftop recreation deck. I did not. I can see that. He walked the roof again. Technically, this is an existing serviceable flat roof area, not an occupied deck. Correct. I would not encourage turning it into one. I won't. The parapet is lower than what I would want for regular gathering use. One chair, center position. I see that. He took photographs. Then he said the thing Felicia did not want to hear. I don't see a building code violation. Downstairs, she challenged him. What about safety? It is unusual. That is not safe. Those are different words. He is using a roof as a patio. No permanent conversion has occurred. What if someone falls? That concern exists on ladders, balconies, stairs, and roofs generally. So you approve this? I did not say approve. Raymond remained patient. I said I have no code violation to cite based on what I inspected. Felicia looked toward me. This is not over. Raymond put away his tablet. For me, it is. He left. Henry had witnessed the entire conversation from next door. Once Raymond's truck disappeared, he walked over. What now? I nap. That is your answer to everything. Has worked so far. No giant finale? No. Public beach party? No. Roof orchestra? No. Parachute? Absolutely not. He looked disappointed again. The satisfying revenge came quietly. Felicia had spent so much time complaining about my naps that the neighborhood began discussing something nobody had discussed before. Rest. Not roof rights. Not HOA authority. Rest. People started admitting how ridiculous their schedules had become. One neighbor worked 2 remote jobs. Another cared for elderly parents at night. A nurse who lived near the entrance slept in short blocks after hospital shifts and said she had always felt guilty closing her curtains during the day because people assumed she was lazy. Henry, the man who called naps surrender, confessed he fell asleep in his recliner every afternoon at 2:30. I close my eyes to think. You snore while thinking. Complex process. The conversation turned into something unexpectedly useful. Residents suggested a quiet hour courtesy period between 2 and 4 on weekends. Not an HOA rule. A custom. No leaf blowers unless necessary. No unnecessary construction noise. No pressure. Just neighbors trying to give each other a little space. Felicia did not create it. She also could not stop it. Someone printed small cards. Briar Glen Slow Hour, Saturday and Sunday, 2 to 4 p.m. Participation voluntary. No enforcement, no fines, no clipboards. Henry added the last line. I told him it was unnecessary. Everyone kept it. The strangest part was Felicia eventually participated. Not publicly, at first. 3 weeks after the roof rule vote, I was walking home from the mailbox around 3:15 when I passed her house. Her car was in the driveway. Curtains half closed. No movement. Then I noticed a pair of shoes beside a chaise on her back patio. Melissa later confirmed what I already suspected. Felicia had started taking afternoon naps. Backyard only. Very private. Very controlled. I never mentioned it. Henry did. He sent her a gift. A straw hat. She returned it. He sent another. She kept the second one. My own roof naps continued through the end of summer. As the weather cooled, I moved back to the porch. Felicia did not object. The old wooden chaise remained in the same place. Same fan. Same side table. Same 20-minute nap. One afternoon, I woke to find another envelope on my chest. My entire body tensed. Then I saw Henry's handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a fake citation. Violation. Excessive peacefulness. Corrective action. Continue immediately. I laughed loud enough to wake myself properly. Felicia happened to be walking past. She looked at the envelope. What now? Violation. Her face became alarmed. From whom? Henry. She rolled her eyes. Then she looked at the chaise. You are back on the porch. Yes, she hesitated. You still look unattended. I am. That phrase still bothers me. Then stop attending. She almost smiled. Almost. Before leaving, she looked up toward the garage roof. Do you still have that beach chair? Of course. Why? In case standards change. She shook her head. You are exhausting. That is why I nap. This time she laughed. Not enough to make us friends. We never became friends. That would have been too neat. Felicia remained stubborn, appearance-conscious, and occasionally capable of turning a flower pot into a committee issue. I remained the man who slept wherever the rules accidentally allowed. The difference was that she stopped treating harmless behavior as a public emergency simply because she disliked the optics. And Briar Glen stopped pretending that a neighborhood looked healthier when nobody appeared tired. People still call me Roof Evan. I pretend to dislike it. Henry once printed a shirt. I actually disliked that. The beach chair now lives inside the garage. Every summer, I bring it back upstairs for one ceremonial nap on the first Saturday of June. Nothing official, no audience, just 20 minutes. Sometimes a neighbor notices, sometimes nobody does. That is better. The best revenge was never making Felicia look foolish from 12 feet higher. It was proving that she had spent weeks trying to control something that required no control at all. She wanted a neighborhood that looked perfectly active, perfectly managed, and perfectly awake. What she got was a neighborhood comfortable enough to rest. And that is the kind of victory we remember at Sovereign Verdict, where sometimes the most effective answer to unnecessary pressure is not shouting louder, but finding a safe chair, choosing your own view, and refusing to feel guilty for closing your eyes. If you enjoy original HOA revenge, where common sense gets the last word, subscribe to Sovereign Verdict. There are plenty more neighborhoods where somebody is still writing rules for problems that never existed.